Italy. Before 1861, there was no country called Italy. The peninsula was largely a collection of small kingdoms, divided north and south. In the north, there were the centers of culture and commerce, like Rome, Milan, and Florence. From these cities came the opera of La Scala, the frescoes of Michelangelo, the design of Da Vinci. But to the south, where the majority of Italian Americans originate, was the impoverished Mezzogiorno region, what northern Italians called the land that time forgot.
South of Naples is a separate world. From this comes the group who are not even Italian. They didn't call themselves Italian. They didn't even know what Italian was, because there was no Italy. My grandfather, Gaetano, was born in the Calabria area. We're talking about the most impoverished part of Italy, the area south of Naples all the way down into Sicily. 85% of the movement to the United States comes from there, because it was the most suffering of the whole peninsula.
The southern provinces had long been under the control of the Spanish Bourbon monarchy, whose despotic kings left southern peasants living in crushing poverty.
The South is an impoverished place. You can't get ahead. The little land that you can use is owned by somebody else who has no interest in your future. The peasants would be bumped from the lines officially by noblemen, treated them like dirt.
Then, in 1860, in hopes of ridding the peninsula of foreign rulers, Italian revolutionary Giuseppe Garibaldi began a military campaign to create a new republic.
Garibaldi wanted Italy to be unified as what we would think of as a democracy with representative government.
In battles throughout southern Italy, Garibaldi and his band of 1,000 volunteers confronted the much better equipped Bourbon army. To his exhausted soldiers, Garibaldi exclaimed, "We either make Italy or we die." By 1861, Garibaldi and his men had forced the Bourbon rulers from the country for good. With Garibaldi's victory, the country of Italy was united, and southern Italians hoped they'd finally be free from tyranny.
After the unification of Italy, Garibaldi thinks he's doing a great thing for all of us. The problem is, all it did to the southern Italians, it was just another invader. Instead of from another country, it was just from the north of Italy. And the northern government did nothing for the southern Italian peasants.
I remember of a story that was passed down from my great-grandmother. She was a midwife, and she would go into people's homes, and she started noticing these curious dents in the wall. And it turned out that women were scraping plaster from the wall and trying to make the flour of the bread go further. I mean, that's how horrific the starvation was at the time.
After unification, most southern Italian peasants could barely provide for their families. What meager wages they made went to pay taxes.
This northern Italian government comes down and they taxed everything. They taxed mules. They taxed food that was mandatory parts of the diet in the South. So this lack of trust of outside is secondary only to this incredible investment they make inside the family. Families were the one thing that could be trusted and the one thing that could be consistent and controlled.
Everybody in authority was the enemy. And if they knew more about you, they could tax you even more. If they knew you had a little garden plot, a home garden plot, they could tax you more. So the whole thing became, don't tell anybody anything. Only the people that you trust the most, your family and your closest friends, because the more knowledge others have, the more they can hurt you with it. And that came with them when they came to America.
Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land. Where are they? They're in the Sea of Galilee. Now, I'm just going to tell you this. If you come to Israel with me, you're going to be a little disappointed when you see the Sea of Galilee. If you're not coming with me, go to Lake Paris. It looks very, very similar. Okay? So just go to Lake Paris and say, okay, now I've been where Jesus lived. So the Eskimos, right, have like 500 words for snow, because snow is around them all the time. You live in Alaska, a lot of snow. If you live in the Middle East, not a lot of water. You don't need a lot of words for water. So the Jews call everything a sea, whether it's a lake, an ocean, or the Mediterranean. It's just a sea, a big river. It's a sea. So it's very, very disappointing when people go there. And so when you go there and you read this story, you're like, how in the heck do you almost die in the Sea of Galilee? Just swim to the shore. It's not that big of a deal. Well, here's what happened. A strong wind had arisen, and they were fighting, underline these words, heavy waves. Let me tell you, it doesn't take much of a wave to scare you to death. It doesn't. Waves can be very, very terrifying. When I took my kids surfing when they were little, oh my gosh, Dad, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die, and it's like a 1-foot wave. Because let me tell you something, water is stronger than you. When it's moving, it's more powerful than you, and it can terrify you. About 15 years ago, Tammy went along to get certified for diving. We're gonna become certified, go out and dive, and we're gonna have this new adventure, and it was gonna be great. So we went through all the classes, and basically, if you wanna know how you get certified diving, you gotta learn all the ways that you can kill yourself. Okay, so you need to know the math, you need to know what's going on so you don't kill yourself diving out in the ocean, because God made us to be above water, not below water, and so when you go below water, bad things can happen. So we passed certification, and it's a blast. We have a good time, and we go for our first dive without an instructor. That means I'm the expert. Tammy's the expert. We're our own experts. We are supposed to save ourselves. That's what it means. So we go to Catalina, right? Not super adventurous, not super dangerous. It's Catalina. You know, it's literally like 5 feet from Long Beach. So it's not scary, right? So we go out there, we have a wonderful dive, great time. We're down below in the ocean, and we're just, we're looking at all kinds of fish, and we're looking at sea life. What we don't know is there's a storm above. We have no idea that a summer storm has come in, and literally it's blowing the boat all over the place that's supposed to pick us up when we come up. So we come up, and we're surprised at this storm that's come in. And it was literally had whipped up instantaneously. The ocean went from flat to about 3 to 4 foot waves. Now that doesn't sound terrifying where you're sitting, but when you're in the ocean and your head is 12 inches above the water as you bob, every 3 to 4 foot wave is, guess what? 3 to 4 feet over your head. So every wave that comes kind of drowns you and pushes you down. Now, we're all out of oxygen, so what that means is my wife, who's a 6, she's a loyalist, this is her primary number, she assesses the situation and says out loud, we're going to die. Now remember, she's an influential person in our church. People look up to her like she's co-leader of this church, and when the co-leader announces, we're all doomed, that's bad news. But she's like, we're gonna die, and we're trying to swim to the boat, and literally the storm is getting fiercer, and the wind is pushing the boat away, and all of a sudden I start to see distress flares coming up all around the ocean, because we're not the only divers on this dive trip. Everybody's in distress. Everybody is saying, rescue me, rescue me, rescue me. And literally it gets terrifying. It gets scary. And Tammy's like losing her mind. We're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. You know, in the 1950s when a woman freaks out, they just smack them. Remember that? The old movies? I need you to focus. Well, I did not do that. I did not do that. But I thought about it. I was like, that's why in the movies they do this. And so she's like, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. And so, you're kind of like in this weird position, and you're not really, you're not really flexible when you're all your dive equipment, you're wearing a wetsuit, you got weights. So I'm like, be quiet. I mean, that's not what I said, but that's what I said in church, right? Be quiet. And I just flip her upside down, put her on the back, and so she's telling God, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. And I look at our group and say, we're not gonna die. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna get to the boat. And I look into the eyes of one of my friends that's with us, and he goes to the church, and he's a good swimmer, surfer. We spend a lot of time in the ocean, and I can see crazy in his eyes. I see it. He's there with his wife. I'm like, we're not gonna die. We're gonna be okay. Everybody stay together. And he's doing this, and then he just swims away, leaves his wife. Now I got my wife who's freaking out. I got another wife who's getting divorced, right? She's like, he just left me, and I gotta it's scary. So I'm dragging my wife like to the boat. She's like, we're gonna die, We finally get to the boat. I'm exhausted. You know, Tammy's still talking to herself. We get to the boat. We get our friend up on the boat. She gets on the boat. There's her husband, who he made it safely to the boat. And so he helps his wife, you know, up to the boat. He gets up there. She just, boom, right in the face. Tags him right in the nose. Don't you ever leave me again. It was great. It was great. And Tammy said, we will never do that again, right? And because she's a powerful person, we've not done that again. So let me just say, waves can be scary. It doesn't take a gigantic, you don't need to be in a hurricane to die, okay? Some of you, you can drown in a swimming pool, someone does a cannonball. I mean, it can get, right, like water is scary. It's very, very scary, and a lot of people dry crossing a river because they think, oh, it's only waist deep. Well, when you're standing up, it's waist deep. When you're laying flat, you're in trouble. So just know it can be very, very scary very, very quickly. So let's talk about the loyalist. The loyalist reflects God's faithfulness. Don't you dare critique Peter. There were 12 disciples. How many got out of the boat? 1. Why on earth would Jesus pick a 6 to be the captain of the other 11 idiots? Because 6s are loyal to the very end. Listen, Peter always wants to be faithful, but he's afraid. But he's there. He's there. And that's why Jesus turns to Peter and he says, your name is Peter, which means rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. He picked the one person who was scared. Why? Because it would require faith to do it. Loyalist reflects God's faithfulness. Every time you criticize Peter, I want you to ask yourself this question. Well, Peter's screwing up. Where are the other 11? When Peter is denying Jesus 3 times, where are the other guys? Not there. They're not there. Right? Loyalists reflect God's faithfulness. The basic motivation of the loyalist is to be safe and to avoid risk. This is what drives them. This is what motivates them. And if you're a 6, God has called you to great faith, but you are going to lean towards great fear. When healthy, the loyalist is able to determine character in the people they encounter. Listen to me. If you have a loyalist in your life, listen to their judgment for people. They see people better than you do. I've learned this over and over again the hard way with my wife. Man, we hired a pastor, this is years and years ago. My wife met this pastor, she said, I don't like him. I don't like him. He gives me the EBGBs. That's what she said. He gives me the creeps. I don't feel right around him. I was like, you're just being sensitive. We had to fire that guy 3 months later because he slept with a woman in our church who wasn't his wife. Should have listened to my wife. She sees people and reads people better than I do. What do you know? I'm the senior pastor of this church. The Lord has anointed me to direct us and give us vision. Why should you listen to a 6? They're reliable. They're reliable. They're loyal. Man, one of the things I love about Tammy is she stuck with me. When I had nothing, she was with me. Never left me. Stuck by my side. They're trustworthy. If she lies, it's on accident. When I lie, it is on purpose. She's compassionate. She cares deeply about you as a church. She loves our church. She loves me. She loves our kids. Next, she's a good planner. Why are they such good planners? Here's why God had me marry a 6. We're going to plant 500 churches. How do we do it? I don't know. I'm going to give you a planner. She's going to help plan how we're going to do this. She's going to be a part of organizing and making this happen. Right? It's one thing to have a vision to build a rocket to the moon. It's another thing to get there. She's a great planner. She's always planning. When unhealthy, here's the thing. They see only potential risk and danger. That's all they see. They only see the negatives. They have a hard time seeing the positive when they become unhealthy. Everyone's unsafe. Everyone is a risk. They trust no one, oftentimes including the people that are closest to them. So then their life becomes dictated by fear and anxiety. So what happens to Peter when he's focused on the Lord? He has faith. What happens when he looks at the world around him and he only sees risk and danger? He sinks. And his life becomes dictated by fear and anxiety. And look at American culture. Most of us are 6s. Our life is dictated by fear and anxiety. And many of us are shut-ins and we go nowhere. So 6s, when unhealthy, don't trust people, causes them to avoid new experiences and to sabotage relationships. Because when you believe that people are unsafe, you're going to cut the relationship off. You're going to cut them before they cut you. And you become your own self-fulfilling prophet. So the core sin of the 6 is fear. Fear. Fear can drive you to do crazy things, can actually drive you away from God. The healthy loyalist is always in pursuit of courage. Always, every day. How am I going to be courageous today? How am I going to have courage in my marriage? How am I going to have courage at work? How am I going to have courage in my relationship with God? How am I going to have courage with my kids? How am I going to have courage with myself? Always in pursuit of courage, trusting God, themselves, and eventually others. God will get you there as you pursue health. So here's how the 6 needs to be real. The 6 needs to be real with self. I want you to focus on this verse. It says, be strong and courageous and do the work. Courage takes work. It takes work. Every single day when we face fear, we will choose to be courageous or we will choose to be afraid. We all have a choice. Be strong and courageous and do the work. Don't be afraid or discouraged. It says, never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Write them deep within your heart. Then you will find favor with both God and people, and you will earn a good reputation. Listen to me, if you're a 6, people are gonna recognize your loyalty, whether they acknowledge it publicly or not. And deep down in their hearts, they wish they were more like you. So how do you love a 6? Please, learn from my wounds. Number 1, be secure and consistent. Guess what I was when we got married? Not secure, not consistent. Always tell the truth, no matter how painful it is. If you want to destabilize your life with a 6, lie to them. Lie to them. They may not have liked what you've done, but they will respect the truth you told. Always tell the truth. Always. Because if you lie, what you've done is you have awakened that monster of fear that lives in their soul. And what it tells them is, I can't trust anyone, including you. Next, thank them for their loyalty to you. Thank them. Just like I thanked Tammy, just like I thanked Julie. Thank them for their loyalty. Thank you for sticking with us through thick and thin. Thank you. Next, encourage them to be courageous. Look, my wife's never gonna be a big wave surfer. That's not happening. She's not gonna paddle out when the waves are big. But every now and then, she'll join me out in the ocean waist deep, right? She'll come on out. What do you gotta do, guys? Don't do what I used to do. Oh, what's that? Right, freak her out, don't do that. It feels funny, but it's not. Right? Celebrate them, man. Man, thanks so much for coming out, swimming out in the ocean. You have no idea how hard it is for them to be courageous. My wife has a little note right by our bedroom, and it says, you've survived 100% of the days that have come before. So there's hope. Like my life is what could go wrong. My wife's life is what could go right. Thank them for their loyalty. Encourage them to be courageous. Next, fiercely support them when they're right. We live in a world that has a hard time standing up for what's right. 6s see truth and they bring us all to it. Support them when they're right. One of the weaknesses of the 6 is they have a hard time trusting the internal compass God has placed in their hearts. Remember, they have a discernment about people? 6s have that. You've got to trust them and support that. Next, lovingly correct them when they're paranoid, because they're gonna be paranoid. I got a friend of mine. He's a pastor. He's gone through some horrible, horrible things. There's been awful things written about on the internet. I mean, his family has been protested. They had to move. They've gone through all kinds of just public drama. So when he calls, I never answer. You know why? Because when he calls, it says blocked. So I have no idea who it is, so I never answer. So then he texts me, why didn't you answer? I always reply, because you're paranoid and I don't know it's you. I just call him on it. You're paranoid. Not everyone is out to get you. Not everyone is unsafe. You have to be able to identify people, lovingly correct them when they're paranoid, right? Fear can run out of control. You're not going to drown when Jesus is standing there. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? When you teach your kids to swim, right? I'm going to drown, I'm going to drown. No, because you're an arm's length. I got you. I'm right here. I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to let you drown. I care about you. I love you. It's okay. Just swim, right? It's okay.